Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode on the challenges and triumph of online teaching during the first part of lockdown. We're looking at March until July because we're now going back for the next set of lockdown. So I'm looking at when we first came onto the platform and we had no idea of what to do. Now, when we go back, we've got more idea because we've actually learned the platform. So we've got a little bit, knowledge of it. Right, so at the Female Educators Roundtable with your host, Debby Enoe, and another educator from around the world. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you so very much for coming on board. And thank you, Facebook, my Facebook fans, for tuning in and listening to some of the challenges that we've been having. You also need to remember that educators are human beings as well. So when we are demonstrating our anxiety, we're saying that as much as everybody in society in the whole world are frightened about this virus, so are we. And the interesting thing about it, our job is so very different from most jobs because our clients who are our students, they actually come very close to us. And some of us also have to be wiping the runny noses because we're talking about 3-year-olds. So that's how our jobs are so very different. So there should be no comparison with an educator's job with anyone else. As you also remember and you also know, in everybody's life, they've had an educator's input, whether or not it's positive or negative. We've had input in every profession and everybody's life. So when you guys starting to really attack us, just spare a thought that we've actually made an input in your life and we are also human beings as well. Okay, I am not ranting and raving. I'm just setting the record straight because people are getting it all confused and they're attacking us and saying that we don't care about our students. La di la di la. Yes, we do care about the students, or else we wouldn't do the job. The job does not afford us a Bentley or a Mercedes, any of those things. It doesn't pay us. We're doing it because we're passionate about it and because we want to impact knowledge on other people. And we feel that we have something to give people. That's the reason why we do it. Because we don't do it for the money, because as people know, more other professions have money. Education don't have money. We do it because we love it. So remember that. I'm not mourning, I'm just saying. Thank you very much. Welcome on board. Introduce yourself, tell us what country you come from, and the age group you teach, please.
Yes. Hi, I'm Dr. Jenny Santilli. I'm also nationally board certified. I teach Spanish at Bridgeport High School in in Bridgeport, West Virginia. I live in Clarksburg. I come from a very poor state, but the area where I teach is actually pretty high economically for our state. So some of the problems my colleagues have, I don't. I also teach night classes at a local university. I'm an adjunct professor. I have taught middle school in the past, but currently it's high school and university. I also mentor pre-service teachers that are going into the education, and I help teachers become nationally board certified.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome. Right, as I kept saying all the time that we were thrown into the online space because we've all been trained and taught in the physical classroom. So we had no choice than to learn on the job. And for some of us, it was very challenging, especially if computer wasn't our forte. I used to teach computer studies, but at the same time, going online was a challenge for me. So how was it for you in terms of teaching on the online space when most of us are trained in the physical classroom? What were some of the challenges and the excitement? Because it's not only challenging, the excitement as well, right?
Right. Well, I have to be honest first about the advantages I had. For all of our high school kids, each one of them had an iPad. And every single one of my students had internet. However, we also had parents working from home, siblings had to do school online. Some of my students live way out in the country, so the internet wasn't so good. So even though they had an iPad and internet, it wasn't always an advantage. Sometimes it just didn't work real well. The other advantage I had is that I had been doing a flipped classroom for about seven or 8 years.
Oh, right.
So my teaching videos and PowerPoints were already recorded. The students were used to watching those, doing the practice slides at home, and then we did practice in class. So we kind of flipped. Instead of them struggling with homework at home, they struggled with it in class, where I was there to help them, where they could work in groups. So I had that advantage, and all of the practice work and activities we do, I like the computer myself. So all of my stuff was already online, but not really online. What I mean to say is I created them on the computer, but just because I created a packet of activities on a computer doesn't mean that translates into online. So I really had to think about, how can I do this where I know they're going to have a lot more independent time than what they're used to. The students were wonderful. I just told them, we're going to work on this together. And they were great in saying, this is working, that's not, can you do this? Can you try that? So it was just great that my students collaborated with me. But I have to tell you, I cried more this spring than I have in 39 years of teaching, because I was afraid I wasn't meeting the needs of my kids. But what I realized after a lot of praying, crying, cussing, yelling, not in front of the kids, that was me privately and with my colleagues. But you know what? We got through it. And the biggest lesson I learned was the kids just wanted to know that I was there for them. And that I still love them, and we were gonna get through it. Some kids I didn't think were going to pass, and it took a lot more phone calls to parents, a lot more emails, we had a lot more communication with students. So and I did some tricks, like, for example, I'm a boomer. So I give my students my home phone, but I don't feel right giving them my cell phone. To me, that's too private. So I did get Google Voice. So if they wanted to text me, my cell phone number was disguised in the Google Voice. The other advantage to Google Voice is it would pop up on my Gmail. So I could call through email too. I also set up, one thing I learned was, just don't throw a lot at them. So our school happens to have a license for Schoology. So I've been using Schoology for a few years, just to put all their work up there, the videos, PowerPoints, links, all that. So that was already there. But we started using the conference feature, which I love Zoom. They wouldn't let us use Zoom. Zoom is so much better, but you got to work with what you have. And then we just didn't do very many apps. We used, because it is a communication class and a speaking class, we did use Flipgrid. We used Kahoot. So don't try a lot of new things. You don't need a lot of gadgets and gimmicks. Just have one main platform to share everything, and then maybe a few apps to give some variety.
Thank you. So that's another question I was going to ask you in terms of your relationship with the parents. Do you feel that your relationship with the parents online was much greater and stronger than it was in the classroom? Or it was worse? What was it?
Yeah, I think it was better, because it was so new for the kids, and it was so new for the parents. And even though they're high school kids, so they're 14 to 18, there was still that, it was just a different level of independence and ownership of learning that they weren't used to. So some parents were really concerned. And my school is, not to brag, but it is always in the top 3 in the whole state. So we have a lot of kids that they are going to go to Ivy League schools. Some of them study overseas. So there's a huge drive to, sometimes the parents aren't concerned with what they're learning, but what grades they're getting. So there was a lot more concern that way. And but what I was able to communicate with the parents is like, look, we're all in this same boat together. We're all going to do our part. We're all going to row this boat, and we're going to get to shore. And so I think just know, when I told them very clearly, this is what I need from your child, this is what I'm going to do, this is what you can do. And so I felt like it was more of a team effort this spring than ever before.
So therefore, you would see it as you become closer to the parents in terms of the relationship. So you had a relationship and a partnership. You had a real good partnership going on there.
Yes. And I learned more about the students too, because I would say, what can you tell me about your son and daughter that is going to help me help him or her in the classroom? And so maybe I learned some stuff that isn't in their permanent record or in their IEP. So that helped.
Yeah. Thank you. The other thing, how many students you would normally have in the physical classroom and how many students did you have online?
We have block scheduling, so most of their classes, my Spanish classes, they're finished in one semester. So I would say 90% of my students showed up at some point, but I would say about 80% of them showed up consistently. And I didn't have online classes every day because it was too much for them to do it every single day, but I was available every day if they needed help. But that was a concern. I had one student, when he stayed with his dad, he participated all week. When he stayed with his mom, he had to watch younger siblings, and he was apologizing. I said, look, your mom's putting food on the table. I said, if this were the olden days, you'd have to drop out of school altogether. At least, you can look online and get your work and get caught up. Call me if you need anything. So some of the students had legitimate reasons. We had one girl, she could only participate for half an hour because her dad had to get on his Zoom meeting for work. Well, again, he's feeding the family, so I can't fault her for not being able to participate. But you know what? We worked it out. And then we had some kids that just didn't care. But guess what? They didn't care before March either. So it wasn't, I didn't see, I didn't see a vast difference of work ethic from pre-COVID to during COVID. I didn't. I had one student, I had a couple students who did really, really well online. They preferred that. Like they didn't, there weren't distractions from classmates. They could work at their own pace and then meet up to discuss it. So,
so how many, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, definitely the majority of them prefer face-to-face. I'm sorry, there's nothing as good as face-to-face, but we do what we have to.
Exactly, isn't it? So in terms of in terms of the interaction, how did you get them to form a community online?
I did a couple different things. The conference feature on Schoology is a little bit different. It has the, like they get the link and they can sign up. Some of them called in on phone, but they couldn't see each other, which was bad. So I figured it out, and it was, the good thing was it was with my Spanish 4 class. So they're pretty independent and they like Spanish, and they were also getting college credit. So my vice principal was observing, because I said, well, why don't you come to our class and see how it goes? Well, we figured out that if I made every student moderator, they could see each other. So I thought, perfect. Except I started to explain a grammar question, and one of the boys muted me in front of my principal. So, I mean, you can't get mad. It was kind of funny. So that is the risk. Yeah, that's kind of the risk you run, but it was worth it. I had some kids that would say, are we finished with class? I'm like, you're finished, you can go. Some kids just wanted to stay and talk to each other. Sometimes they had a question about one of their grades, or did you get my assignment? One thing I'm really going to work on this year, I was looking for homework in 4 different places. It was like through Schoology, through my school email. I mean, it was like, I'm like, where did you send it? I don't know. And then it was like, it was so time consuming. Like, no, this time we're
Madness.
it to the homework box on Schoology, guys. But some of them weren't comfortable typing the assignment, so they'd write it on paper and take a picture. Well, you can't edit a picture. You can't. It was, but anyway, we got through it. The other thing I did was I set up a blog. In Schoology, it's not called blogging, it's called discussion. So I would give them a prompt and maybe 2 or 3 prompts. They picked one question, they answered it, but then they had to respond to 2 other classmates.
Okay.
So they're reading through each other's work and responding. And sometimes it wasn't a requirement for a grade, but sometimes they'd have a little discussion back. They'd go beyond the requirements and they'd have a discussion back and forth. So that was one way. Definitely this semester, the first 2 weeks, I'm hitting because I'm not going to see them. And even when they're in the classroom, the way my county is doing it, 9th graders are coming on Monday, sophomores come on Tuesday, juniors Wednesday, seniors Thursday. So I will never have my whole class together. So we're going to be doing a lot of this is who I am type of activities in the beginning.
Okay, thank you. You said that you did not teach every day online. How many hours per day did you teach them?
If we met, I tried to keep it to half an hour, 45 minutes. And, you know, even as adults, the screen wears you out.
Yeah.
Whether you're a participant or the moderator, it wears you out. So I tried to keep it to half an hour, 45 minutes, but on occasion, sometimes we went over an hour if the kids really wanted to keep working. And so I did that. It worked out in one class. None of their other teachers were online. They just sent them work. Yeah. No, the kids said, can you teach our other teachers how to do this? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to get, no, they're my friends. No.
I'm not getting involved. Exactly.
No, I said, but you need to tell, you know, don't mention names, but tell your counselors, contact the administrators and say, we'd prefer to see the teachers once a week. With this semester, they want us to have at least 2 contacts with students a week. So Fridays definitely will be online. And it may not be face-to-face like this. It could be a teaching video but I like twice a week. You can just catch up. Anybody need food? Anybody need help? Is there something going on at home? You need to tell me privately. So it's to check up on them too.
Okay, so thank you. So when you actually when you taught them online, did they actually have the camera on or off? What was your policy on that?
I preferred that they have it on, but I didn't push it. And I just said, I'm just asking you to be honest. Some of them would mute because one dad was really loud on his Zoom call. And it was funny. I mean, but we're used to distractions. We have distractions in normal class. So we had animals, we had siblings, we had, my favorite, mom was bringing in a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So some of them just had younger brothers and sisters that were loud. And so, you know, but we had the chat feature. And so I could say, all right, turn your mic on. It's your turn. You just kind of work with it and do the best you can. So, and I told them, don't worry about distractions. And sometimes friends would go together. They'd be allowed in the house together and they would do class together. And you just ask them to please stay off your phones, please pay attention. But you just have to give up that control. You cannot, you just ask them to meet your expectations. And then, you know what, at the end of the day, they're in charge of their learning, you're not.
That's very true. because I keep on saying in most of the session, educators are control, we like control, right? We control obsessed. Because when we're in our classroom, we have full control of the classroom. Students are not paying attention. We, ensure that they're engaged, etc. On the online platform, the students have told us indirectly, you have no control over me here. This is my territory. I could mute you if I want to. I could switch my camera off if I want to. I could decide not to come onto the lesson. I could decide whether or not I send your email letter. They had full control. So in terms of differentiation, they were doing it themselves. We had no choice.
Right. And one girl, I said, why aren't you showing your face today? She said, nobody's seeing my hair today. Okay. But she participated. And you know what? I don't care if they're in their pajamas, as long as body parts are covered. I don't care. I just want you to show up. You want to eat or drink? You know what? We eat or drink in class too. Okay. And I happen to have an old farm sink in my bathroom. So people are constantly coming in to wash their hands, get paper towels, because they put blow dryers in the bathroom, which now they have to turn off.
Yeah.
You can't have blow dryers during COVID. So we're back to paper towels. But I mean, you have principals on the loudspeaker. You have kids coming by for a Band-Aid. That's just the way it is. So yeah. I did get, now the nice thing about Flipgrid, and that's where they do their speeches, and if they don't want to show their face, they can pick an emoji and put over their face.
Okay.
They can do a fake background. They can put sparkles. They can, yeah. So they kind of like that. So.
Okay. So it's like, you kind of made it very innovative for them to actually connect.
Yes.
So how, in terms of discipline, in the physical classroom, when the student comes, we'll have a set of ground rules or expectation. So they know what to expect. We know what to expect. What was it like for you online in terms of expectation of ground rules?
It was tough because we didn't have any. Mm-hmm. When we left in March, we thought it was, we knew COVID wasn't the flu, but we figured out 2 weeks we're going to be back.
Yeah.
And normally at the beginning of my semester, the students make a contract for behavior. If I were the teacher, this is what we would expect. If we were the teacher, this is what we do not want to see. And then we have rewards. So basically, if you don't irritate me, what can I give you at the end of the term? So, but in March, mid-March, there were no rules. And then the State Department, and I understand their thinking, because in West Virginia, it's very, very rural. So we have some kids that don't have phone service, let alone internet. So they said, if they don't do well after March, just if they had a C at whatever they had by March 13th, that's the grade we'll give them. So some of the students took advantage of that. And I had one boy who did not show up, I checked, he had internet. He could have done the work. He chose not to. He was the only one of my students that flunked, but he ended up with a D because he had a C and he knew that. So D isn't flunking. So he got his credit for Spanish too. So, but this time, I have a whole handbook for them, and it's how to be successful in a world language classroom. And I added a chapter on netiquette. So we are going to discuss that, even though I have my rules and I have rules from the school and the county, and we have counties, not districts. I'm still going to work with the kids to say, what is reasonable for me to expect of you and for you to expect of me. They give me rules too. I get rules too.
Okay. So it's two ways, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Come on to do. Okay. The other thing is, in terms of attention, how did you, ensure that the attention is what expected?
we went at a much slower pace than
Okay.
normal. And I started warning them in May that I said, this is not going to be the pace next year for Spanish 3. We're going to have to pick it up because I'm not going to get the curriculum covered. So I went at a slower pace, but I still tried to vary activities. So we still did songs. Instead of, we do a lot of reading and songs. We call it comprehensible input in foreign language. That's the way we teach now. So we just throw a lot at them and then break it down. Instead of doing a bunch of rules and then explaining the rules, we pull the rules out of the material. So what I did was I changed where they would get a packet with activities. I took one of them and made it into a PowerPoint book.
Okay.
And they absolutely loved it. My niece helped me. My brother's a professional photographer. I gave her a list. I said, these are the pictures I need you to take in the house, and your mom has to help too. And so half the page was a picture of my niece and half the page was the writing. And I think the reason the kids liked it, they could click at their own pace, but I think they liked it because it might have been one sentence or 2 paragraphs, but it was a chunk at a time. Instead of looking at a couple pages of writing, it was chunks.
Okay.
So I'm gonna modify all my packets like that. So it's and asking them a lot of questions. Like I quit lecturing a long time ago. Today's not a good example, but when I teach, I quit lecturing a long time ago. So you have to ask them a lot of questions and play games like Kahoot. Also, you can do it on Zoom, conference, Teams. You can put up little polls. So I would put up polls and they could respond to the polls real quick and then we could look at the results.
Okay. That's quite good because it means that you actually have them engaging, which is, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
What type of behavior issues did you have with the students? If any?
I really didn't have any. A couple of times I would have to tell students I could tell they were on their phone, but they were usually texting somebody else in the classmate and asking questions. And so I think the biggest problem I had, and I don't know if it's a discipline problem, was having all the students come to all the sessions.
Okay.
That was the biggest problem.
Why was it a problem? You had them all come into the sessions.
Not all of them all the time.
Okay.
So some of them would check in enough, but not. Most of them were really good about getting, not in our class sessions, but most of them were good about downloading their work.
Okay. So even though you didn't have them in the classroom, they actually, did the work. So that's a plus because you actually had them,
Most of them did. And then as with a face-to-face class, some just barely skated under the radar. They did just enough so their parents wouldn't ground them. And that was it.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is they're actually taking responsibility for their learning. So there isn't much you could do on that because you're saying, okay, you're now an adult, so therefore take responsibility. And they were doing that.
Right.
Which is a plus, isn't it?
Yes.
In terms of, that's in terms of confidence. Would you say that the confidence have increased with the online platform, or what was the confidence like in relationship to the classroom and the online platform?
It's definitely increased, but my brain won't shut off. Yeah, I'm definitely pretty confident doing it, but I have had more training since March than probably for my master's degree. I have just tried to absorb as much as I can to be as good as I can. So I'm always looking for new things. And then sometimes you just have to say, stop, enough is enough. I'm going to start and see how this goes. I'm not going to keep trying. Some, not my county, but a lot of counties wouldn't even give teachers enough time to absorb like how to use the platform or how to use an app, get their kids up to speed. And then oh, this isn't working. And they'd switch to something. I have one colleague, she had to go through 3 different things.
Whoa.
Like, you can't do that.
Exactly.
You just, you know, stick with it and see how it works first.
Exactly. So which means that, sorry, they're not even having enough time to see whether or not it works.
Right. Yeah. So my county was lucky in that, you know, we had Schoology for a few years. I had Schoology before the county ever bought it. So I was pretty familiar with it. Some of us were. I had written a grant for us to learn how to do flipped classrooms about 7 or 8 years ago. So there were a few of us in our building, and in the county, we had other teachers that were involved in the grant too. But a lot of teachers didn't use it a whole lot. So, but it was good. There were enough of us that, you know, we'd get on it on our teacher site. How in the heck do you do this? But, you know,
it's interesting because
yeah, but the kids were online too, and they were helping each other.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's really, it's interesting though, because it seems like, you know, you had a community with your students, you had a connection with your student, and there was a little community going on there, which is, you know, which seems to be quite nice, you know, in terms of getting them to support each other and stuff like that, because it means that the work is half done when they actually supporting each other, which is very good.
Yeah, well, in one class, time just got by me and I was 15 minutes late starting the conference. And I'm like, oh no. So I sent an email to their email. I sent a notice through their Schoology, and I got on and I thought, oh my gosh, I hope they show up, because after 15, God knows what they're doing.
Exactly.
They were there.
Wow.
I said, how did you guys get on so fast? I just sent you an email. They said, we knew you'd show up.
Oh, wow.
They waited for me.
That's brilliant.
How gracious was that of them?
Exactly.
They knew I would show up eventually. Yeah.
That's good.
And I never did it again.
But that wasn't deliberate though. That's the whole thing about it. You know, things were happening, you see. That's the whole, as educators, there's sometimes, you know, we might be running to our classes late because we got talking to a student on the routes, you know. And it's like all of that, you know, those are some of the challenges that we actually encounter. Because in the physical classroom, sometimes you're moving from one class to another, and on the way a student said, oh, miss, and you're thinking, you'll have to walk with me because I'm going to my class. You know, so it's like all of that, we constantly on the go. That's the thing about it. It's really, it's just interesting. And in terms of self-care, what did you do in terms of self-care? How did you take care of yourself? And how did you encourage your students to take care of themselves?
Well, I didn't do so well at that.
I'm yet to find an educator who said to me, yes, Debbie, it's done.
No, I was just scrambling so much. And we finished the first week of June. And my mom just kind of looked at me. I said, I just need a couple days. And I was a vegetable for 2 days because I had been holding it together for so long. So I would say I wasn't very good. And because we had never fully taught online like this, we had very blurred lines. We have, again, Boomer, I refuse to have my email or my Schoology email connected to my phone. Good. Some teachers, the younger teachers do. They were getting beeps at 2 and 3 in the morning because the kids were up and turning their work in. They were getting phone calls, you know, and I was staying up trying to get all the work caught up and get feedback back to them. And so there were a lot of blurred lines. And so one of the things we worked on as teachers, as a group, was my principal said, he's like, look, they can come to school at 7 o'clock. You're not going to see them till 8:30. So between 7:30 when you get here and 8:30, that's parent call time, students can call you, they need help. And then we have a half an hour at the end of the day. The kids are dismissed a half hour early. We stay there, and he said, I hope none of you take calls after 3 o'clock. For years, for 39 years, I've taken calls at night. It's just never bothered me. But this year, it's like you need to call between 6:30 and 9. You haven't, if you have trouble with homework, you have until 8:30 the next morning. And if you call me, I'll extend your deadline, no problem. So I think that will help with self-care, because there are going to be some very definite lines of, this is when I'm on, and this is my family time. So, and the kids, well, you always take care of the kids before yourself. You always,
isn't it? Which is wrong.
Yeah. Because what happens on an airplane? That mask comes down. Adults are supposed to.
Exactly. And that's what educators are forgetting. Because when you don't take care of yourself, you haven't got that much energy to take care of anybody else. So self-force doesn't mean selfish. Lack of self-force means selfish. If you don't take care of yourself, I see you as being selfish, because it means that when you don't take care of yourself and then you fall ill, everybody else now have to scramble to support your class. Whereas when you take care of yourself, which means you're fine, there would be little chance of you actually becoming ill, because you're taking care of yourself. Exactly. So that is so very important. I keep on saying to my educators, lack of self-care is selfish, because when you don't take care of yourself and you become ill, your family suffer. The schools suffer, the students suffer. So that's selfish, because everyone else is suffering because you did not take care of yourself. When you take care of yourself, everybody is fine. So that's something we need to remember. And it is sad, because I have yet to find educators on this platform that said to me, Debbie, my self-care took priority. I probably have three educators, and I've actually spoke to well over 100 of them, and probably about 3 of them said to me, yes, Debbie, I made it my priority. Everyone else, oh, well, I'd forgotten, or no, we cannot afford to do that. Right. And you have a fantastic principal, though, who is saying that this is what you guys need to do. This is priority. This is brilliant. That's brilliant.
And it's because he knows if he doesn't take care of us, we can't take care of our kids.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had one student that got mad because I didn't respond to her email, and I was like, it's Saturday and I was with my family, and she immediately apologized. So we also have to notify kids that when you email me, I will respond within 24 hours on a business day.
Exactly.
So if you email me on Saturday, I'm not going to get to it till 7:30 on Monday.
Exactly. And that's what we need to do. You see, that's what I said to you earlier on when people saying about superhero, because the minute they start attaching superhero to you, you should not have any break. You should have no family. It's like one educator said to me that she saw some students in Starbucks, and the students were surprised that she was actually in Starbucks and getting something to eat.
Well, and you know, what was really tough for us too is that we had teachers. I mean, my children are adults and my mom is very independent. I don't have to take care of her, but they had small children. They had infants who were still nursing at home, and they couldn't take them to the babysitter. And so it was, for some of our staff, it was a double whammy.
Yeah. Because I've had one educator who said to me that, you know, she had to breastfeed, so she would have her camera off, because at the time of teaching, this child needed breastfeeding. So she had to breastfeed while she's teaching. So some of them, it was really challenging, because having to teach and having your small ones to deal with. And people don't seem to see that or appreciate that we're human as well, which is so very sad. Eh?
It is. I had a former student of mine at another school is now one of our tech specialists, and they were working from home too, because they couldn't, you know, and so I was having trouble with my computer, and her baby started screeching, not crying, screeching.
Wow.
And I just burst out laughing. I was like, look, Leafy, I don't care. I just want my computer fixed. If you need to go take care of her, go get her. I'll wait.
Exactly.
I just wanted the computer fixed.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
you just have to do give and take for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is so very true. And it's interesting because while we were doing this, the parents were saying, "Oh, we're so very good, we're supporting them, etc." But I keep on saying to everybody, people's minds are fickle. The minute we are not doing what they want us to do, we become the enemy. It didn't take too long for that to happen.
No, as soon as here in West Virginia and across the United States, as soon as they found out we may not be in school full time, it was like, no, we've already put up with this since March, and I know this is not just in the United States. I know it's in England
Yep.
and other countries too.
It's globally.
For
Yeah.
years, they have wanted schools to fix society. We are educators. We are not in charge of bad home lives. We are not in charge of kids who are hungry. We are not in charge of parents who are on drugs. We are not in charge of good parents who aren't home because they're working 2 and 3 jobs. We do whatever we can to mitigate that. But until the legislatures get up off their assets and put in some laws to support families, to give us an economy that works. And if somebody has a low paying job, then pay them a little bit extra to make ends meet. Give them some insurance for their children. We can't fix those problems that you have allowed for years corporations and control freaks to manipulate. It's impossible.
Yep.
Cannot do
Yep.
it. And
Yep.
it's so disheartening that I can no longer recruit talented students into education. They're like, yeah, we've seen your life and no, we want to make money. And they're not being greedy. I had one student tell me, look, I want a wife and kids one day in a decent house in a decent neighborhood. Teaching isn't going to cut it. I can't argue with that. Not
Exactly.
Teachers. It is disheartening.
It is. It is. And that's the sad reality because you see, we have that and then we have people attacking us when we're doing the best we can. We're doing the best we can with very little resources. I've been in schools where I had to buy my flip chart. I had to buy my marker pen because I got in there. They didn't have it. I'm saying to the administrator, okay, I need some flip chart. She said to me, what is that? Really? The secretary is asking me, what is that? I said, don't worry. I'll bring that in. Markers, I asked for markers. They gave me 3 markers. What can 3 markers do? So all these things that we have to buy our resources. And I found myself traveling on public transport with my flip chart, rolling to a ball, my bags with all my bits and pieces, because when I get to the classroom, I want my tools. These are the things we have to do, because when you get to the school and they don't have it, there's no point. And sometimes when you get there and they might have it, it takes over a week for you to get those resources. Really?
Yep.
And these are the reality we're talking about, what goes on in the schools. And we are doing the best we can with limited resources, and yet still we're being attacked because, you don't care. Who you think you are, you're coward. Because we say we are afraid of going back to the physical classroom, like everybody else is saying they're afraid. So we're just demonstrating our emotions, but we shouldn't, because we're supposed to be superheroes, and superheroes are the cartoon characters, and they have no emotions or feelings. Yeah. It's sad.
Well, yeah. And the other excuse they give us is, well, not everybody has internet. We have been telling our legislators and our government since the 90s, that you need to be working on getting everybody connected. And now we're going to use some of the CARES money from the federal government. They're going to put some hot spots around, but I'm like, no, They need towers, not hotspots, because what if a family can't drive? I mean, we have some kids that are on the bus for 45 to 60 minutes from their homes to get to school. So, and you can outfit buses with hotspots and just have those local drivers. There are a lot of things you can do. We've had some teachers that live out in the country that had to go sit in the school parking lot to do their work.
Yes, I've seen one of the educators on one of the programs, the group. She said that she had to drive her car in the car park to actually get internet to teach her students. And these are reality. And you see, that's the sad thing about all of that, the fact that educators are doing the best they can in order to teach their students. And that is not even being seen. Instead, people are attacking educators. Like you, there is no way I have, in all my teaching in the last 3 years, I haven't had students who say to me they want to become an educator. They're all saying the same thing to me. Miss, why should I become an educator? You know, the pay is rubbish. What's the point? We cannot blame them.
No, I'm, every once in a while I get some students who are, one of my former students right now is working, she's finishing her master's in education. She'll graduate in December and she'll teach Spanish. But this is my 10th year in the building, one Spanish teacher in 10 years.
Wow.
One. Yeah.
Wow.
And for my state, it's one of the bigger schools. We have about 840 kids.
Wow.
That's considered a big school in my state. So.
Okay. It's interesting because education is being drained because people are not going in education. That's the reason why we constantly have a shortage of education globally.
Yes.
Because nobody wants to go into education because when everybody's criticizing what you do and you also feel that you're doing the best you can, it is quite painful. And the other sad thing about it is some educators take it personally when they're being attacked. And I keep on saying to them, you need to not take it personally, but sometimes it is difficult to not take it personally when they're saying to you, oh, educators are lazy, and you know that you're not lazy. But when they're saying that, it kind of hit home to you and thinking, I'm not lazy, why are they saying that? So all those things are pushing people not to go into education. And there'll constantly be a shortage in education unless they start giving us more pay, they start respecting the profession and treating the profession like all other professions. There is no profession anybody's going to be saying to the doctor, oh, well, you need to do this because this is what works. No, you wouldn't say that to the solicitor, but everybody feel that they could tell educators how to teach.
And I have a doctorate and national board certification. I am as qualified as a medical doctor. Exactly. I mean, my doctorate's in curriculum and instruction, but in all the years experience I have, I am a professional. I'm just really blessed that my county overall supports us because not all teachers have that.
Yeah, it is very true because everybody feels they could tell us what to do. That's the sad thing about it. Right. What's your opinion on schools reopening and the attack that you've been given, i.e. your opening and the issues?
Well, our governor is using metrics from Harvard University that were designed for states with a big population. West Virginia is like this big. As far as population, we're under 2 million in the whole state.
Okay.
But he keeps moving the goalposts.
Right.
And we have a color code system. And as soon as we saw the color code system, we're like, that's it, we're going back. And I'm just, our local school board had decided on July 21st, look, we're going to do all remote schooling for 9 weeks. We'll see where we are and we go from there. A lot of counties were starting to make that decision. Some of them had even made it public, even beyond the board meeting. It's public, but I mean, it made the news. The governor got wind of it, and that was the end of that. According to the Constitution, our local superintendents can decide if a school is going to open. And now they're saying, no, you can't do that. Well, yes, they can, but they don't want to, they don't want anybody to be mad at them either. They don't want it. And the superintendents aren't united. If they would unite and just say, this is what's best for everybody involved. The other problem we have is that as a teacher, I have a job, whether I'm teaching in my basement, at the school board, in the classroom, and my kids are at home, I have a job. My other colleagues don't. The custodians, cooks, bus drivers, aides, paraprofessionals, nurses, secretaries, they may not have that assurance. And so I understand where they're coming from. They want to feed their families too. We also have across the state, I mean, we started all the teacher strikes in 2018. We were the first state to go out. And then other states went, and then the other people in other countries went. We started a global thing there. But we have people now, there are people like me that are like, look, this is dangerous. Let's just wait until things are better. But we have some people who truly believe this is a hoax. Everybody just needs to get it and get over it. And so all the school employees are not united. The parents are not united. And to be selfish, I'll be teaching at the school board. I'm not going to be exposed to all those kids, to all those colleagues. There is no way we can social distance in the classroom, depending on how many kids you have. If you teach a 9th grade class, you may have 30 kids in one room. Now, I do have the advantage that I have mixed grades. Right now, the biggest grade I have is I have 12 freshmen. So yeah, so it's a little bit better, but I'm still not going to get 6 feet between each desk. And you can forget group work. You can forget getting up, singing, dancing, that all the fun stuff's gone. And I don't think parents understand, fully understand that going back into the building is not going back to normal. It's not. They've got to have the mask. It's got to cover the, it's, we're going to do the very best we can, but we'll see. I mean, we've seen in other countries where they tried to go back and then 2 weeks later they were back home.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. Well,
and it's, and we're not saying we don't want to work. We're just saying we want remote schooling. We're still going to work.
And we want to do it safely. We want to do it safely. That's all we say. We want to do it safely. As from next week, we would be going back in the physical classroom. But it's quite interesting because they are saying that the children in one school, they're saying that the children are not going to be socially distanced. The school is not stipulating that they wear masks, but they're saying that the educators have to wear masks. What they're saying as well is in the playground, they have separate playground for different cohort of students. They've organized it that they're different, one way in and one way out. But what concerns me is in the classroom, there are normally 30 children, 31 children. And there's no way they could be physically distanced. So therefore, they're saying that that's not going to be taken into consideration. You're going full on. And they have a choice whether or not they want to wear masks, the student, but the educators would have to wear masks. It's kind of a challenging because you are thinking you have a class of 31 or 30, how is that going to work? So, there's interesting times ahead. It'll be interesting, like next week, when we go back to see what actually have taken place and how things have, how things are, etc. Because the students are going on, there is stagnation in terms of when the students go in, because they're going in next week, but 1 week One day you'll have them going in late. So the times varies, which is quite good. So the different year groups have different times to go in. But it's just interesting in the sense that we are having a full class of 31. Some of them no mask, etc. So it's just going to be interesting to see what happens. Interesting.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I've been reading in the newspapers that some schools, some headmistresses and headmasters are saying that they're not going to go back into the physical classroom. They're actually adamant that they're not going to go back. So it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing pan out, because you have some educators and some principals saying they're not going back in the physical classroom. And you have some of them saying that, well, the government say that you ought to go back, so we're going to go back. Because if parents choose not to send the children in, the parents going to be fined. You know, so they have all of that. So it's going to be just interesting to see, you know, what happened when I come back next week onto the platform to tell my people, you know, what is going to be like. It's going to be interesting. It's interesting.
Well, we had just this morning at 10:30, I just watched a little bit of it. There were parents protesting about sports and cheerleading and band, because depending on what color your county is, you may or may not be able to do sports. So if you have a high number of COVID cases, you're not allowed to participate. Right now, the greater number of cases are in the southern part of the state. And they're like, well, that's not fair. The central and the northern part and the panhandles get to play. That's not fair. Our kids can't play. And it's like, oh my gosh, sports.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, very divided state, you know,
Wow.
but you know, you're talking, but I can kind of see their side too, because you're talking, if you don't play, what are your odds of getting a scholarship to go to college and play sports? So and for some families, it's really important to see their kids on the field, on the stage, in the pool, competing. And this is just not fun. It's not fun.
It's interesting because they've actually, the schools, so far, all the schools I'm aware of, they've actually banned sports. They say sports activities and extracurricular activities are now off, suspended until things are better. So, you know, everybody knows that, you know, in terms of sports, etc. It's just the whole world, and we all going through you know, we are all on this journey. We all in the same, you know, the same situation, but different countries deals with it very, 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 very different. It depends on how they see educators and how they see the life of educators. It's just really interesting.
Well, and it's not just educators. I say school workers, because our bus drivers could have 65 people in back of them in a contained space. 65 people. You know, and our cooks are, I mean, our custodians they've been working all summer. They've put sanitizers in every single room. They have like that Ghostbusters thing to spray down everything. They spray down the rooms. They wipe everything down. It's just, and in West Virginia, we have, because of greedy corporations, we have a really bad opioid problem. So we have a lot of students living with grandparents who are elderly, who may be immunocompromised. Some of them are real young kids. And, you know, the studies are showing now that the younger children, overall, they don't get as sick as the older people. But even if they don't get real sick or they have no symptoms, they can still infect. And people think, well, if they don't get sick, they're not contagious. And I'm like, that's not how it works. And so we have that extra fear of they may go home and infect the only people that can take care of them.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a very challenging times, huh? Very, very challenging times.
Just put one foot in front of the other. A lot of praying.
Yes. That's all we can do. Lots of praying. What 3 tips would you give educators who now going onto the online platform for the first time? Because as we know, not everybody had the practice session as we did, right? Some
Right.
didn't. Because I'm looking at, I've been in a number of teachers group, and some of them say, oh my goodness, I am overwhelmed. I'm so stressed. This is the first time I'm going online. And I'm thinking, okay, we had the practice session. We were fortunate, you know.
Right.
So what 3 tips would you give?
Yeah. Number 1 is remember that you're not teaching a subject, you're teaching children.
Yeah.
So you have to just really care for your kids and get over yourself, because you're there to take care of kids. It doesn't matter if you're fat. They don't care if you have eye makeup on or lipstick. They don't care. They just be there for your kids. Number 2, don't get bogged down in a lot of frilly stuff. Pick one platform to deliver your instruction, maybe a couple apps to help kids or to keep it interesting. And the 3rd is don't be afraid to ask your colleagues, your kids, other people in your district for help. You are not being weak when you say, look, I can't figure this out. What can I do? So those would be my 3 main tips.
It's interesting. That is very true. Thank you. One of the things we constantly have as educators, we feel that we should not ask for help.
Right. You know what? I remember years ago in the 90s when in our state, when computers were first coming on board, and one of the teachers said, well, I'm not going to ask the kids for help. And I'm like, they already know you don't know.
Exactly.
Just give it up, because I'll stand there and I'll start talking to it in Spanish, and then very rarely do my kids speak Arabic. So then I start cussing it in Arabic, and and I'll just tell the kids, somebody get up here and fix this. They're like, Doctora, look in the left-hand corner, click that. No, not that one. Click that side. And you know what? We get through it. And you know what? How much that empowers your kids that you're not a know-it-all and they can help you.
Yeah, it is so important. You see, it's like sometimes when you have the whiteboard connecting to the laptop, they don't always connect. I'm saying to my student, look, I am not techie like this. Somebody come and help. And especially when we have Kahoots, I say to them, Kahoots isn't working on my computer. Someone better come and work this. I am saying that I don't have all the answers. They say, Mrs. Okay, this person is good at this, so they're going to come and help. Yes, come and help me. I don't know what to do. So the more we show the student that we don't have all the answers, the more we get their cooperation and the more they actually help us. I keep on saying we're not encyclopedias. We need to realize that we're human beings. It is okay to tell students that you don't know what you're doing.
Yep.
It's okay.
But we're going to get through it together. We're going to figure it out.
Exactly. And I think that's important. You know, when students ask me questions I don't know, I say, listen, I do not carry a dictionary in my head. Come on, go look for it, or tomorrow we have the answer. Yeah, we need to. We need to demonstrate vulnerability. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
Right. Have you got anything else you want to say to us before we actually close up?
No, just remember that what we do matters, and we do have the best job in the world. And sometimes we just have to shut out the negative voices. We have the best job in the world.
Yes, I would second that. Whoops. We definitely have the best job in the world, because in everybody's life, there have been an educator. So therefore, this is demonstrating that you guys cannot do without our input. So stop cussing us, embrace us.
Exactly.
Yeah, yep. So that's what I'm leaving you guys with. Stop telling us off. We're doing the best we can. And our job, rightly said Jenny, is the best job in the world. In everybody's life, they have had an educator. You know, they've come across an educator, whether or not it's early part of their life or later part in their life. And you guys need to embrace that. Give us credit for that. Come on. Right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Please like, share, and comment. Please share those videos because I know for educators out there, you're not alone. We're sharing our experiences, so therefore you realize that, oh my goodness, this is what they're going through, so why am I feeling overwhelmed? You're going to get through it. You never knew about the platform before, but we didn't think, we actually did get through it. Remember, educators, you are going to get through this. You are good enough. You need to remember you're good enough. Well done. I must say that as educators, I am so proud of you guys because we've done well. Forget about the chatter going on. We need, as Jenny rightly said, we need to close it off. They're not important. We know what we're doing and we know how well we're doing it. Well done, educators. Never underestimate what you can do, guys. You've done well. You didn't know anything and you've got through with it. Well done. Thank you, everybody, for coming online. Please, as I said, like, share, and comment. When I go back in the feed, I'm going to comment when you've actually asked questions, etc. Yes, thank you. Good night, good morning, good evening. Take care. Look after yourself and stay blessed. Thank you.
Bye.